let's talk about turret wires. Welcome back to the garage. If you found us through the BPAA website, we have a new collaboration with them doing pin setter maintenance videos. We're doing some short videos on there showing some stuff to do on the pin setters, and it's referring over to here to do the full-length video. So if this is your first time visiting, welcome. If you've been here for a while, welcome back, and hopefully you can watch these videos and learn something about the Brunswick pin setter to help make these free fall pin setters last a long time. Snip those strings on those string pin setters. We don't like those. Best way to check your turret wires, just sit on the machine while it's running. During league, if you got a full house, just get on top of them and watch it while it runs. That's the best time to do it. Or go out, if you got nobody on them, just cycle it through a bunch and just kind of watch them. And each pin individually as they fall over in the turret and when they drop into the buckets. You want to see a clean drop. You want to check your gaps, make sure they're not too wide, too narrow. And when they fall in the buckets, that it falls cleanly and quickly. Because sometimes the wires are off center, and the pins can fall kind of slowly in the bucket, which could lead to the spider knot locking, could lead to the pin missing the bucket altogether, and then having a blackout. Now when the pins fall in the buckets, you don't want to see any hesitation. You notice that 10 pin was a little slow falling, so you want to reposition the turret wires a little bit to the left. That way it'll get away from the spoon quicker. It's probably a little too far on one side. The spoon goes that way, so I'm going to try and move the turret wires a little bit that way, so that way when the spoons go out of the way here, the pin will fall out quicker. You check each pin individually, make sure it's like right here, this is a little too narrow. There's no gap on either side of the wires, so you want to bend these wires out a little bit because right here it's going to kind of stop the pin from falling freely. So these wires need to be bent out just a little bit. Come to the next one here. This one's pretty good, but if you notice, we got a broken turret wire up here. So we need to get this one and replace it because that could cause pin damage or something else. Come to the next one here. Check it, spacing is good. Just check each one individually. Like right here, this one's a little bit wide maybe, but it's not too bad. I'm gonna leave this one alone. Get to this one here. This one's pretty wide. You want to make sure that's going to stay in there and not bounce around and fall out. Here's one here. Now this one's really wide. See here? It shouldn't be that wide in between the turret wires. You want to bend these together and take away that big gap. You just want about the width of a penny on each side. Checking this one here. See how tight that is? Your pin can sit there and not fall down and hit the pedal. So these wires need to be bent apart because it's too tight. And when you're adjusting turret wires, usually if you're bending them in together, to do that at the lower portion of the turret wire, but if you're bending them apart, it's usually best to spread them apart at the top. Okay, now let's take a look at this 2-pin. See, we got a gap there in the turret wire, a pretty big gap there, and you got a gap over here. You want about maybe a penny width gap on both sides. So this one's a little too wide. What that can do is cause that pin to bounce around in there and not seat right, and it could potentially fall out of the turret before it's supposed to if it sits in there crooked. You want to have those wires tight so that way the pin stands straight up and down and doesn't have a chance to bounce out of there. And also if it sits crooked, when it gets around to the bucket it's going to drop into, it might hang on the edge of the bucket and not fall in cleanly, then you might have a blackout. Also, to go along with your turret wires, you want to make sure your buckets are oriented correctly because they can go in many different positions and they can always be installed wrong. So if you continually have maybe a blackout, pins aren't falling in correctly, check your buckets and make sure that the 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 9 are oriented properly. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and fix this turret wire here. This is the one we talked about that's a little too wide. See how that pin shouldn't have that much room side to side. It's real simple. Just get in here if you can, bend it by hand closer down to the bottom, and then put the pin back in here. Check your gap. Now I've got it a little too narrow. I don't have a gap, so I'm just going to pull it apart a little bit. And right there. Little bit more. There we go. I got just a very minimal gap in there now. That pin's going to sit better and it should drop cleanly. Watch it again on a few cycles, make sure it drops properly. And another one I've run into, if you have this wire here a little too far spread apart at the top, the pin will fall in and sometimes the head will bounce back over, and then it advances like this, and then you get a situation like this where the pin gets caught up and the turret cannot advance. You want to bring those top wires in a little tighter. Make sure you don't have them too tight. If nothing else, take this part of the wire and move it out further that way, and that way the pin won't be able to bounce back and do this. Also check your snubber. I have the old A snubber on mine, the spring-loaded one right here. The newer ones bolt on right here is more of a blade, and you can tweak the blade a little bit and just play with it until you get the right setting on there. And here's something else to look for. And if you have a lane that maybe the head of the pins are getting little marks right here all the way around, these are more spread out, but usually it's right here on the turret wires. See how you got that little wear area right there on the top of the turret wires? That's where the pin always falls, and if they break right there, the top of your pin's going to hit that little broken area. That's when it's going to chew up the head of your pin. So check your turret wire and see if you got a broken one, if you're getting a bunch of marks on your pins near the top. So that's it on turret wire adjustments. Something you probably don't think about much, but it can play a big part in your pinsetter's operation. Make sure the pins fall cleanly, the butt of the pin's not hanging up on the bucket edge. Make sure the pins don't hesitate when they fall, and just make sure your turret wires are snug so you don't have pins sitting crooked or whatever and causing other problems. Continue to check back often. We got a lot of other videos. Check out all our other playlists. If you're into vintage bowling or want to see some stuff that we've collected and videos that we made, we got lots of live streams, other things here in the Garage Bowling Alley. Subscribe to us, check back often, like us, spread the word, cut those strings, no string pinsetters, free fall pinsetters forever. Thanks for watching.